100,000 years ago, there were people who stayed by the campfire and people who wandered. I'm pretty sure I'm a direct descendant of the wandering type. It's just who I am.
Welcome to the Wandering Type Podcast. I'm Dean, and I run the Podskier Podcast Network, which is the home of the Wandering Type Podcast. How are you now? The toughest podcast in Letterkenny, Podskier Podcast. I produce the Boondocks Podcast, and along with my beautiful wife, Tiara. Tiara, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm just peachy. Why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Tiara. Like Dean said, I'm on the How Are You Now podcast and the Boondocks podcast. I am a teacher on hiatus at the moment, writing children's books and watching a lot of TV.
And one of those things that we've been watching has been Reacher on Amazon Prime.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So, yeah, we are a podcast about all things Jack Reacher, but mostly focusing on the Amazon Prime series, Reacher, starring Alan Ritchson, who just this last month in March of 2022 brought their first season based off the Lee Child novel Killing Floor, which was the very first novel. So why we're doing this. So I've enjoyed action movies for as long as I can remember. The strong, silent, rugged characters were always the ones who were always the most popular, of course. Watching movies of John Wayne, Clint Eastwood, Charles Bronson, Steve McQueen, and like were always the normal thing for a boy like myself when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, because that was the way things were then. Then later, getting into the hard-boiled detectives and the gritty stories they came up with just added to that growing fascination. Over the years, the nuances of my tastes have changed, but those hard-nosed, strong-willed, and fearless characters remain in the forefront of my mind. 2012, though, a new Tom Cruise vehicle came out. I had never heard before. Jack Reacher, and it was a great story. It had a great cast, fantastic action. 4 years later, a sequel came out, Jack Reacher, Never Go Back, and that was just as intense, as action-packed as the first. So my enjoyment of the movies made me really kind of want to do a deeper dive into the Jack Reacher mythos. So nothing against Tom Cruise, but in my research, he did a great job of acting in both movies. However, Tom Cruise, depending upon what story you read, is anywhere from 5'4" to 5'7". He had one point in time where he claimed to be 5'9". Regardless, he is not 6'5", 250 pounds as the Jack Reacher character is. Hell, even Alan Ritchson, who plays him in the show, is 2 inches shy of the 6'5" mark. So it's
he looks like the character, like right. He embodies.
He does
physicality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's definitely more suited to the physicality of the role.
Yes.
Anyway, after finding out that Amazon would be making the Reacher series, I decided that I would start reading the books. And from doing so, I was sold immediately. TR has been reading them with me. But anyway, so it's now 25 years after the very first book, Killing Floor, was released. And this is the book which the first season is based. Because the things have changed in 25 years, of course, there have been some updates that have reflected that, which are great. There's also a few style changes to the story. And we'll discuss that as we put out each episode. So Tiara, what's your take on this? I mean, I'm coming from my take with how I grew up watching action movies and things like that. I
think for me, the fact that there are 25 books in the series was one of the biggest draws. I love to get into a story and really just kind of get immersed in it. And when we got the first one on Audible and then the second and the third and what are we on, the sixth now?
I think we're 5 or 6.
5 or 6, something like that.
5 or 6.
Yeah, I love it. And I've read the first book, I think, like twice all the way through now. And so when we are talking about the Amazon series, I'm going to probably bring up a lot of like differences, especially because some of the things that were changed for the TV series really improved the story, in my opinion. And I'm also that person that will critique stuff probably more than you will, my dear. So.
and that's exactly why I wanted you to be a part of this, because I have
you get excited about this.
Oh, I do. I have an affinity for the action heroes. I mean, I always have. I mean, like I said, growing up in the 80s, which was a huge period of time for action movies.
Oh yeah.
So, and it started in the 70s, like I said, Steve McQueen, with that was kind of the first action. I mean, before then, like 60s, 70s, it was, you had some action, but it was, a lot of cowboy movies. It was more
caper and
you had a lot of, a lot of those investigator, the noir type stuff.
Kind of like the underlying thing of Reacher with it almost feeling like a detective story, even though he's not technically a detective.
Right.
So you've got that feeling of kind of that old noir, but also a lot of fighting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you took the action genre and you mix that with the private detective genre, because that's essentially what Reacher is. He is now a private citizen. But he's never lost that investigator attitude, that mindset, that kind of, I mean, it also, because of his background as an MP, having grown up in a military lifestyle, and we're going to cover all of this as well, but, he will have a lot of that come into play in his character. I mean, it's just, and I think Lee Child, who wrote these stories, did a great job, even though he is a Brit. I mean,
right,
which was surprising to me. It's I'm not quite as surprised to find out that he was a Brit as I was we were both reading as an example Lovecraft Country, and finding out that Matt Ruff, the guy who wrote it, is a white guy. So some folks can do have some insight and understanding, and that's great. So I think Lee did a great job so far with this series. Now, and I know you'll probably be talking. There's some things that that did not age so well.
No,
and it's just because times change.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the first book was written in 97. 97. So I graduated from high school the year the first book came out. As an example, I am a 43? Yeah, I'm a 43-year-old woman. Yeah. And this came out when I was like heavy into the goth grunge phase of my life, because growing up in Seattle, which, there's still a little bit of that in me now, of course, but action movies and books at the time, that was not my forte. I was reading and watching primarily horror and thriller, which is still a big genre that I follow. But in the last 15 years since you and I have been together, I definitely have expanded my love of things like that. I've always loved noir films. I've loved the old detective films from like the 40s, 50s, 60s. So yeah, all of that. I was really also very impressed with the TV show, because it's so hard to do an adaptation well, especially when there are voracious fans like this has.
Yeah.
So,
and I once it came out and I started kind of going through the hashtags of it out on Twitter, I did see a lot of folks who had not watched it yet because of the Tom Cruise aspect of it.
Quite a few friends of ours, actually. I had conversations where they're like, but Tom Cruise movies. And it was like, no.
Yeah. And again.
And those were good.
Yeah. I'm not putting anything against Tom Cruise. I mean, he's
not our favorite actor, but that has nothing to do. He wasn't Reacher.
No. Tom Cruise.
He wasn't intimidating enough.
And I've said this a number of times. Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise in all his movies.
Yes.
And I'll say the same thing about Ryan Reynolds. I love Ryan Reynolds, but Ryan Reynolds is always Ryan Reynolds in all of his movies. So
Ryan Reynolds is always Deadpool in his movies.
Essentially, yeah. But he's always going to be that type of character. And so I think, when you have people who can go beyond that, I mean, I've watched some of the interviews with Alan Ritchson, and yes, he is the body of Jack Reacher, but his personality as
So different.
just as himself, he is so gregarious and seems
Adorable.
like a sweetheart of a guy. He's definitely acting, and he's
Yes.
doing it well.
Yes.
And now I do intend to go watch Titans, Blue Mountain State.
Oh, everything else he's been in?
I'll even watch
The Divergent series or whatever it was?
Yeah, I'll even go watch
That was Hunger Games, right?
Yeah, the stupid Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Wait, which
he was one of those.
In the newer one?
In one of the newer ones, yeah.
Okay,
So,
I didn't know that one.
Yep. So yeah.
All right, fun homework.
So
I'm all about it.
So we'll be doing that. But I'm really looking forward to doing this.
Yeah.
And this is going to be a little bit different, so if you've listened to us on the Boondocks or on How Are You Now, not that we're going to be humorless, but this is a different character. This is a different feel of a show. So this is definitely more serious. There's definitely some humorous aspects to the show that they've added in that were not there in the book, and which I think have played out great.
And for those of you like me at home who are saying ACAB under your breath, it's really interesting how they kind of handle the fact that cops aren't super great in this show.
They do.
Like there are a couple of really really good police characters, of course, because you can't have a police procedural essentially without having, the good cops.
Right.
But like the bad cops are valid. They're real. They're like, beating up people just because they're black. Like, and seeing them stand up to each other. Like that's what I want to see. You don't see that in cop shows. You don't see the cops going head to head against each other. Except for like a minor storyline in Brooklyn Nine-Nine or, something like that. So that made me really happy because I am definitely not pro cop necessarily.
Yeah. And as we all know, not all cops are heroes.
Right.
And that's what we've been shown for so long. And I think part of the thing in Jack Reacher is that, he is a former cop, and now he's MPs. I do think that's a little bit different than your standard civilian cop because it's a different set of laws.
And also the people that they're investigating are trained killers.
True.
That was something that he actually mentioned, I think in the show, not in the book.
Yeah. That his job is, he's gone everywhere and he's
had the same job as the detective, only he was trained with people who did things like that all the time.
Right. You're trained to police trained killers, people who are given specific training on how to kill people. So it's a little bit different than it is being a civilian cop. So, and
you have a military background, which I definitely do not.
Right.
So
I've personally never had any run-ins. I don't think I even met an MP while I was in. So, I saw them driving around, but I was never pulled over by an MP. The only time I ever saw MPs get involved with anything was one time, and this kind of plays into the Jack Reacher character, how he used to chase down those who went AWOL. And I have seen that. I was waiting for somebody coming in on a flight, and apparently an AWOL person got brought back into this same airport. Now this was a little airport in Manhattan, Kansas. So I was stationed in Fort Riley, Kansas, member of the 1st Infantry Division, Big Red 1. And the only airport that came in was in this place, Manhattan, Kansas, like half an hour outside of Junction City. And so as people would, it was just a little one tiny airport. So I was parked out there waiting for a buddy of mine to come in because I was picking him up, taking him back to barracks. Well, another flight had come in and they brought this private in. He was dressed in his dress uniform, and he got off the plane. He came out. The MPs were there waiting for him.
Oh.
And they stripped his rank off of his uniform right there in front of everybody, handcuffed him and threw him in the van. And I was like, wow, and that was the first and only time I ever saw anything like that in the military. So that was my really only The only time I ever saw anything with MPs in the military.
And that was during wartime.
No, that was prior.
That was prior
okay. To, yeah. Cause this would have been 89 or 90. So probably a year before,
okay. Desert Storm really
happened. Yeah. So that's the one I was at. So yeah, but anyway, and so the other things that I like about Reacher is, I mean, his fighting style. I love that he's learned to fight and the way he fights. And I do one of the folks that we've talked to before on How Are You Now, as well as, other programs that we're good friends with, Dennis Guggen, who he is a security guard. He is also a martial artist. And I do kind of want to chat. I would like to chat with him about some of the stuff that happens, in Jack's fighting style, because it's a very it's a very brutal fighting style. He is not one to play by the rules.
Right.
If you're there to fight, you're there to get the fight over and done with, and that's his job. If he's going to be fighting one person or five, he's going to be as brutal as he can to get it over as fast as he can. So I am kind of curious about some of that. So I would like to, bring in Dennis and some of the other folks who, have that kind of background.
Yeah.
To kind of cover some of that. I would also, I think it would be interesting to find, somebody who is an investigator. I think it would be interesting to talk about the investigative process that they have, at least in this first season.
Hell yeah.
About how they do things. I mean, because it seems to me some of it would be like antithetical of how
Reacher approaches things.
Yeah, because as an example, and we'll get into this right off the bat in the first episode, is the amount of information that they're sharing with a potential.
Yes, that is true.
The potential person who's committed these crimes. So I find that interesting that they would have told him so much stuff. So I would imagine that you give some stuff away, of course, just to try to fit as you're fishing, but that seemed like a lot of stuff. So I would like to find somebody who could talk to some of that information, because I think it would be very interesting.
Definitely.
So what are you looking forward to for this first season of The Wandering Type?
I mean, I'm looking forward to kind of seeing where this goes. Just the podcast itself, what we can do with the material that we've got, the talking about the books and the movies and the TV show, but especially the TV show, of course. Yeah. It would be awesome if we could get people especially people with different opinions that we have, to talk about those things. I mean, it would be a dream to talk to the stars or Lee Childs himself, but I mean.
It's fun. Yeah. And I know Lee and his wife, who have, I think, now been married for almost 40 years now, if I was looking correctly. And they live in New York now. Yes, he's British. And now one of the things that I will tell you is that, he's written 24 books, and he's now passed on the writing of the series to his brother Andrew. I'm honestly really interested to get to the point where it changes over from Lee Childs to his brother, and to see how the styles differ or change, because I know Childs has talked about how he doesn't actually even like the character. Yeah. And he, what was the quote? He's the only person that Jack Reacher is afraid of, because he's the only person that can tell Jack Reacher what to do. Yep.
I wonder if his brother would take it from that same point of view.
Yeah, I don't know. I know
that's the kind of stuff I want to talk about.
I do know that from reading, comments from others who have read the entire series and are now up to Andrew's books, that it's definitely a different style. I can't say that that's good or bad, but I think
we'll have to get there.
Yeah, once we get there, we'll see. But I am looking forward to this. I think one of the things that I'm kind of looking forward to, and I don't know if they'll do this in the series, but have them the two movies that were done, which one
if
shot.
If they do those as a season.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, to see one shot. So the one shot one was the first one with Tom Cruise in 2012 that they did with Rosamund Pike, and Jai Courtney, and all those other people. I can't remember all the other actors' names, but yeah, gosh, even Werner Herzog was in it as the bad guy. So, and he's great at playing a bad guy. But yeah, I'm kind of curious. I am very interested to see how that would play out. And then the same with the second one, because I find that very interesting as well. That Jack potentially has a kid. So,
right.
And how he deals with that going, in an extended series. So.
I want to read that story. Like, I want to see what was left out of the movie.
Right. So, yeah.
But we're not there yet. But and I won't jump ahead.
But yeah, so yeah, some of the things. So you're going to notice some changes. If you've read the books, you're going to notice some changes. Now,
hopefully you like them. And
so what we'll also do is, as we're going through each episode, is we'll talk about the chapters in the books, in the book, and this, well, so far it's just one book, The Killing Floor, that is reflecting of each episode. So as episode 1, if you wanted to get started, episode 1 covers chapters 1 through part of 10. So all of 9, part of 10. 10, and then chapter 10 covers the end of episode 1, beginning of episode 2. So if you wanted to start there, you could start there, and then we'll talk about, where you'll want to join us for the next episode. And I believe our plan right now is to do these every other week.
Yes.
So we will be putting out our pilot episode, along with episode 1 right at the same time. So you won't have to wait 2 weeks between the pilot and episode 1. But then after that will be every. Yeah. So this is going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
Me too.
Anything else you would like to chat about before we say farewell and say welcome to the Wandering Type podcast, and we'll see you for episode 1. Welcome to Margrave. All right. See you next time.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Wandering Type podcast. Please join us again next time as we bring you season 1, episode 1 from The Killing Floor, chapters 1 through 9. Welcome to Margrave. See you next time.